Welcome to the Greatness Engineering Show. It is always a pleasure to have you, and I hope you're all doing well. Today we're staying in Australia. My guest is tuning in all the way from Queensland, so it might be a bit early in the morning for the audience in Europe, but don't worry. You'll have the opportunity to watch the replay, and I'm gonna also rebroadcast the episode. And so this is Mireille, all the way from Perth, Australia. You know me as the Greatness Engineer, and I hope you know that you are ready to talk about a very important subject today. We're going to talk about social impact and really understand, the real application of social impact in our environment, in our communities. And it is very important for us to understand what it is. And my guest today, Andrea Kanaris, who is a social scientist and founder of All Things Social Impact, will help us to understand what it is. And we really want to know what are the challenges as well and the opportunity for all of us. So Andrea she has more than 20 years experience in that, with this particular expertise. She assists organizations in managing social, risk and achieving community-oriented results. And she works with, organization and communities locally here in Australia, but also globally. So let us know where you're watching from if you're watching live. But even if you watch later, just put a note in the comment section and let us know where you are so that we can have an idea of who we're talking to. And I urge you to have your notebook because a lot is going to be shared today. And like I said, this is a very important issue that touches all of us. So get ready. I'll bring Andrea now, and we will start this conversation. And if you have any insight as well, just don't hesitate. This show is for you, and this show is to bring you to the next level of your greatness. And I hope that you're going to enjoy it. So let's start and bring Andrea with us now. To another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, the show that is brought to you by the Virai Global Leadership Organization.
Feel is important is if you just look at the word compassion, when it's behavior, it's something that can be learned, and it is something that we can embody through habits and through our daily actions.
To get this idea that if we interject this wisdom intentionally, I call them needle movers. It's the needle mover that's missing.
Don't deprive the world of your greatness. Please. Don't do that anymore. Dare to excel, dare to be sexy, dare to be you, dare to be the best version of yourself. Impact yourself positively, and from there impact others, and you are not alone.
Welcome, Andrea. Welcome to the Greatness Engineering show. It is always a pleasure, and I'm so excited today because we stay in Australia. We normally go far away to, North America, Europe, Africa, but today we are here in Australia, and so happy to talk about social impact because there's a lot going on right now, and we really want to understand, how, you manage through with your client globally and locally. So just to for the audience, I've done a short introduction, but if there is anything to add, please add to the introduction done. So you are Andrea, so the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Muriel. It's lovely for you to have me here today. I'm really thrilled to be here and to talk to you and your audience. No, you pretty much summed it up. I do social impact work, and I do it from end to end, from pre-feasibility and scoping of projects, right, and design of projects, right through to the closure planning and the decommissioning of projects. Like, I've been working primarily on large-scale, high-risk projects. So, your mining, your resourcing, the renewables, obviously, as we transition, but pretty much across industries. But it might be helpful to not assume that everyone knows what social impact is. So if you don't mind, I might provide a definition that I kind of work from in terms of what social impact, and to keep it nice and simple and in lay terms, I assess the impact that these projects have on their local communities and the communities in which they operate. A lot of people will be familiar with terms like ESG. I would be the S within that ESG. They've heard of corporate social responsibility. Obviously, a lot of the work around social impacts plays into that corporate social responsibility space. And it really is taking clients on this journey, if you like, of understanding their social risk. And there's an internal component to that, which I think a lot of companies are quite good at, understanding their workforce, their diversity in their workforce, those kinds of things. But there's an external component that I think is a lot more challenging for them to understand. And that's probably where, I would say definitely where people like myself who work with them to understand how the community experience the projects, and particularly new projects that come into communities, but even the long term, that relationship long term, because relationships are never set in stone. They change over time, and it's how to manage those and how to manage your impacts along with your community in a partnership kind of model. So that's the work that I do, Meryl.
Yes, and it's a very important work because, like you mentioned, we talk a lot about the energy transition, especially in a country like Australia.
Yeah.
The mining and oil and gas are really the key industry here. So I just wanted to understand what are the key challenges that you encounter right now, because things are going really fast. On top of that, we see as well, on the social side, a rise of mental health issues. So, which is, it's quite important. When we, at first we didn't really focus on that when we were running project, but now we have to look at it and how it impacts, the project are impacting the communities. So what are the key challenges right now for you, and what do you see as a key challenge?
Yeah, fantastic question. And I think you probably hit on one of the biggest ones, and it's the speed at which the transition is happening. I believe that when you go at that kind of speed, you miss too much. And I think in terms of communities that has happened. And it reminds me back to, and this will resonate with you and probably a lot of your listeners being engineers, where you've seen this mistake being made previously in the mining space in the early days, where they didn't understand corporate social responsibility, the social aspects of the work that they were doing. And you would see these booms happen where the impacts on the communities were quite severe, quite often. And I would say they've been on quite a journey over the years to understand that a bit better. What we're seeing is booms in the renewables space, where you were seeing multiple projects and a lack of understanding, that your technology may be a solution for the future in terms of the transition to renewables. That doesn't mean you don't have impact. You have impact. And that understanding within that industry is immature. They don't understand social impact in the way that a lot of the other industries have actually learned it. So I think there's layers of problems that come with that. So we saw in New South Wales renewable energy zones being put into place. And some of those areas already had housing shortages. They already had tight markets. And you layer on that, not just one large project, but multiple large projects all happening within a short period of time being pushed through to those communities. That was even before the crisis. And then the housing crisis hit, which one would argue that it wasn't the causal factor, but it certainly exacerbates the problem. So social impact work and the social risks needed to have been thought through sort of right at the early stages around how you do that. And one would suggest with what we're seeing in a lot of these things is perhaps a slower staged stepping into the transition to renewables that actually considered the social impact more in a more considered, more thorough way. And not to mention the cost of living that is going through the roof.
Exactly.
It's expensive.
And I wanted to touch on that because we've been told that yes, we have to decarbonize, we have to transition to clean energy, but there's no really mention of what this transition is going to have. The impact is going to have on the cost of living. Obviously, especially during that transition, the energy is becoming more expensive. And we know that energy is at the core of everything. So food, the logistic part and everything. So everything is going to go up because it becomes more difficult during that transition. Become more expensive to provide the energy. So what do you think about all of this?
This is probably one of my biggest concerns with the transition and how it's going down. I've been asking for a long time, where is our transition plan? And I don't mean, a plan isn't just we're going to transition to renewables and here's the pipeline. To me, a plan is very much about really thoughtful consideration of not just the how you do it, but the when you do it, the timing of when you do it, an understanding of the risks in all aspects. So the community risks, the economic risks, the environmental risks should all be considered in a more measured way. And this, in my opinion, I haven't seen a very good plan like you, Muriel, and it's concerning. It's concerning because, as you say, the cost of living is going through the roof. The electricity bills in, I don't know what it's like in WA, but I'm on the East Coast, and, like WA, Queensland is traditionally a resourcing mining state. The government here have been subsidising electricity bills for quite some time. But what it does is it covets the problem. And we're not going to be able to do that forever because money that comes from the mining that has been covering that will not last forever. It's not an endless pit of dollars that can subsidise electricity. And what we find is when you look at your bill, if people were looking at their bills and had to pay their bills, it's almost tripled, and I sort of think there are some of us who can go, okay, we can swallow that. We could probably, it's going to hurt, but we can wear it. But there are overwhelming amount of people in this country who are more of the working class, who live week by week. If they have to start paying their electricity bill tomorrow, it could be enough to tip them over. Layer that with the fact that we've got an existing housing crisis. How many more homeless people do we need in our parks? There was a time in Brisbane where you rarely saw a homeless person, and now our parks have got tents throughout them. It is not uncommon now to see this. So the cost of living crisis is real. electricity and the cost of energy is definitely underpins that. So I share your concerns. And my answer is that our policymakers, our decision makers need to get back to human-centered decision making.
And that's the thing is, we look at, I think we look at this transition in an holistic way. I think that's, what I can see so far. It's like, okay, we want to transition and be fully, renewable at that date. But like you said, is it realistic? Can we just go back and see, do a reverse thinking and say, okay, this is what the transition will look like if we want to do it, and then let's work back, what's going to be needed, and in looking at all aspect of it, and the social part is the most important one here. How is going to impact, and then now revise the timing. But it looks like it's just like a slogan, and people are just have to follow, and it becomes really difficult to have, like you said, a human-centered, solution about it. And I'm just trying to understand, how do you navigate that? Because you probably work for you helping in that particular area, big companies, and sometimes it's really difficult to navigate and propose something to very multinational or big company here in Australia. So how do you navigate that so far?
Yeah, it is challenging, right? Because there's so many layers of it. You work with a company and they're delivering a project, but there are a list of things, as you know, that they have to do. Our regulatory framework says, the legislation, the regulatory framework says you have to do these things. So trying to then get them to move away from just a ticking the box here and there becomes challenging, because the framework itself and the regulatory environment itself lends itself to tick boxing. So to make it meaningful, it really is about understanding the risk. And I think that's where most business people understand that language. And as social practitioners, we have to get better at and good at understanding their business and the risk to them. So, for example, and we've seen this a lot with, we saw it with coal and coal projects and the protests against them and the impact that they had. But the Rocky Hill decision in New South Wales, and I think it was 2000, I don't know exactly the year, but I'm thinking it might have been around 2019, 2018. And the Rocky Hill decision was one of the first times that we actually saw a decision made based on social impact, where a project was stopped because of the social impacts being unacceptable. We've seen an increase of that. But even before we get to that extreme end, projects get delayed. And every time a project gets delayed a day, the best way to talk to a client, or for a client to understand, or a business to understand why it's important to do this properly and to understand their social risk, is because what does it cost you every day to run a project? Because every day it runs late, that's what it's costing you, right? Because you're still going to have to do it. And we all know that if you have to redo things, it takes more time, and it's a lot more costly. So I think that's the way I check with them in terms of risk. So how, do you want the truck to be stopped at the gate so that it can't go onto the construction site? Do you want your project approvals held up because you haven't properly consulted and understood the concerns of the community? And where possible, avoided impacts through your design, and where you've recognised, high risks that you've addressed the proper acceptable ways that will work to mitigate them. So, that's the language I think that you need to talk with businesses, because it's what they understand, and it's where it crosses over with what we do. We can add the layer of what works in a community. We can help them understand their community, but we do need to talk to them in a manner that makes sense to them as business people, because that's the reality. They're in business to make money, so it has to be a balance, and there has to be an acknowledgement that businesses, to be able to employ people, need to make money, and people to live the lives that they want, to be able to thrive as communities, they need to be employed.
Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge, I think, for organization like yours, or to create this balance where you're talking to people who are, to make money, and they only listen to the dollar language. And then you have on the other part, the social part, which is, sometimes difficult to really understand, especially when we are in a business environment where we can't really quantify until it happens. So it is a big challenge, and that's what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna have a break, and then we will be back to continue this very interesting conversation. And I hope whoever is gonna watch this episode of the Greatness Engineering show will really have an insight on what's happening and how difficult it is to really put social have the social impact taken into account in a business environment, especially when we're talking here, we're talking more about the transition, the energy transition, which is touching everyone locally here, but also globally. So we're going to have a break, and we will be back with Andrea to continue this very insightful conversation. Don't go anywhere. We will be back in a few minutes. To another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, the show that is brought to you by the Mirai Tilekima Global Leadership Organization.
When I left Disney, I met lots of people who are entrepreneurs and just said, look, I'm starting. What advice do you have for us? And I got some great advice. And there was a few things that were key. First of all, and as you saw in the video there, keep it simple. Be simple about what problems you solve.
But what are you hoping for? That means that there's a future. That means that there's something that you yet still need to be realized and materialized in your life. And if you have lost hope and you're not hoping for something, that means you're lost. So we need to get you back to the place of being able to hope again.
Trust the process. So many times we get stuck and paralyzed from taking the first step and taking action to get out of that transactional to the transformational of our own lives because we're afraid. But trust the process. Take that one little microscopic step. And I tell you that once you do that, that will increase into another step and another step and another step. So that's what I'd like to leave with you today.
My message for today is delay is not denial. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to accomplish what it is you want to accomplish in life. Do not stop until you get what it is God has for you.
We are back with Andrea, and we are talking about social impact here. And I hope that, for those who are watching, that you are really, learning a lot from Andrea today. And I really want to know, Andrea, is, so we've talked about the challenges, but obviously you have to stay optimistic, to be able to do the work that you do. So what are the opportunity for someone like you or your organization to make things, better. And how do you do it? Do you have, a particular process that you follow? Do you, have, a way of, some tools that you think are very important that, we need to know as well if we find ourselves, having to manage, social impact challenges as we work on different projects, especially in the energy sector. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, personally, I have adopted very much a social, the application of social science research skills into the planning and design space, I guess. It's an applied social research is the approach that I use. And I think that underpinning knowledge of understanding human behavior so that you can understand kind of what works and what doesn't work. And even more importantly, when you're talking about the relationship between companies and their communities, particularly in these large resourcing projects, is that people don't always tell you straight away what they want. Like, it's understanding how to get underneath what people are telling you and really get to some kind of understanding what's really happening, what's really the issues are, because a lot of people fall into the issue trap. Issues can sometimes actually be impacts, but sometimes issues are just issues. They're not necessarily elevated to the point of actually having impact. So there's understanding that. There's a range of tools that I use. The social science research methods, I use both qualitative and quantitative, because the quantitative will, quite often what it does in the social is raise a whole lot of other questions, whereas the qualitative allows me to get underneath and really understand a deep understanding of the issues raised and then how they may relate to impacts on communities, both in the short, medium and long term. So you're armed with that information, then you can work with knowing the project, understanding the other technical studies. And this is where it gets tricky. One of the really important skills is knowing how to work with other technical experts. They have key knowledge that you need, and whether it be air quality, noise, whether it's the engineers who are designing the project, because if you're talking about avoidance, you need to know what's possible, what can be done, because there's no point going out and working with communities and promising things or talking about things that are not viable. So you need to really understand all of those areas. If there are concern, I'll give you an example. I was working on a gold mine in New South Wales, far west New South Wales, and there was concern in the community around lead. Contamination, extremely sensitive issue, a very valid concern, because they're aware of other gold mining towns where lead was an issue. But working with the engineers and also the human health risk assessment team and the air quality, land contamination team, we were able to not just there were design issues, so we were able to move the air vent, but we were also able to design even the collection of soil sampling to make sure that all of the sites that the community had concern about, so schools, community gardens, churches, playgrounds, we were able to make sure that they all got tested, and then we're able to make sure that there was a transparent communication of where those soil samples were taken from and then what the results were. So being able to do that builds trust. It also, changes the design, even not just of the outcome, but you're designing the outcome into your assessment even, because the early understanding of what it was, we were able to build trust with that community. They knew that we were taking them seriously. They knew that they were being heard, that their concerns were not just being heard, but being acted on. And, the samples came back that there wasn't a lead contamination issue, but there was a confidence in those results because of the way it was conducted.
And it's important that people feel, included. And I think that's That's what I get from what you're saying is, don't just, work on the project and then implement without, involving the community or the key stakeholders from the beginning. So it has to start from basically from day one, so that you bring them along, and they're no surprise, and they also part of the decision making process. And that's sometimes things that been lacking, so far, especially. I don't know what it is right now, particularly, but there's been an improvement from, having, the technical aspect of project being worked on, and leaving the social impact at the end, when, we've done all the development, and we are ready to implement. But it has to change now. It's still to bring the social aspect from the beginning, and then work along with the key stakeholder to come to the implementation, so that everybody's is a winner at the end of the day. So you wrote a book on that. So just let us know what is the title of the book, and what is the goal of this book, and who do you think should what is the niche that you're talking to through this book?
Thank you, Muriel. Yeah, I have written a book, and it's called A Practical Guide to Social Impact Assessment for the Real World. It outlines an end-to-end process for how to conduct a social impact assessment. And that depends on, it doesn't matter the size of the project. It talks about how to tailor it. I use some practical examples in the book, plenty of guidance on where to go for the right information to support your assessment, how to conduct the actual assessment itself, everything even down to writing a fee proposal, right? Because that's not a skill set that a lot of people have when they go into something, right? No one teaches someone how to do these things. So the book does that. Now, who is the target audience? It's a really good question. The target audience to me is anyone who wants to do social impact assessment. Now, some of those are going to be early graduates or early career people who maybe have not conducted one before or have done elements but not all of it. It would also include even professionals who maybe have done some parts of the work but not other parts of the work, or just are looking for other practical examples. So that's useful for them. I think it's extremely useful for people in government who have to assess the social impact assessments for their acceptability against the standards. And I think it's also useful for large organizations and their social performance teams or their communications teams who have to deal with corporate social responsibility, who maybe have to commission a social impact assessment, because this book will help them to understand what it should look like, so they know what they're purchasing and they know what they're doing. And there's also a lot of social performance people who might be sitting one or two people in a large organization. They're not surrounded and supported by people with the right skill sets or that speak their language or understand what they do. So this book will help them do that. The other thing I've done, Mariel, is I have actually built a subscription site. The subscription site has this as I guess the backbone of it, but it has all the tools, templates, guides, broken down to kind of activity level that you can go in and use when you need it. So once you pay your subscription, you go in and use it as often as you like. It also has the benefit of being supplemented with a community of social impact professionals who you can talk to and problem solve together. They'll be able to have an online forum with me once every 2 months to ask questions, to dig in, but in between, obviously, asking questions of each other, learning from each other, sharing each other's experiences. So it becomes a package where they're actually supported by people who speak their language, understand what they're doing, and we can learn from each other.
That's a very good idea, actually, to have this platform where people can talk to each other about social impact, and then really exchange ideas and experiences. And so I would encourage whoever is listening to check it out and become a member, especially if you have to deal with social issue while working on your projects, and it's really important that you understand what's being done and what's possible as well, instead of trying to problem solve on your own. So that's a very important thing. So how do we find the book? Is it on the same website, or it can be found in other platform?
So it will be available on allthingssocialimpact.com and all other places you can purchase books. So it'll be available on Amazon, the other stores that are popular. Also, you will find me on YouTube at All Things Social Impact. So I have a YouTube channel where I talk to social impact professionals about their career journeys and their experiences, how they achieve social impact. And that's from early career to professionals. You will find me on LinkedIn, Andrea Kanaris. You'll find me there. Plus my All Things Social Impact is on there as well. Facebook, Instagram, X. So all the places that you have.
Okay, so you can't miss Andrea. So so go and check on all the social media platform. But the most important thing is, if you want to continue, because obviously in such a short time we can't discuss things in detail. So if you want to continue this conversation, get more insight, get more help, it will be useful to to get a subscription and join the membership on the website, so that you can also network and learn from other professionals. So that's an important step for you. So we will have another break, and then I'll just have your last word on social impact and what's next as well, as far as your work is concerned. So for the audience, don't go anywhere. We will be back for the last part of the show.
Kashina A. Cross from the city of Glenarden, Maryland, born and bred all the way from Aberdeen, Mississippi. So joining the big M's. I am a retired Air Force officer from the United States Air Force, 20 years served, 5 combat tours to war, from the Department of Defense and project management and philanthropy. I've also held roles in cyber networks, also all source intelligence, worked with airframes of different types. And I'm going to tell you, the greatest challenge I've met thus far and the greatest success story that I have is leading the city of Glenarden as a mayor. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you get to be an impact agent in the lives of those that need it most. And I'm going to tell you, it's nothing greater than the service that comes with the whole office, if you will, of serving as a public servant.
When people think about retirement, Marae, they think about somebody in their 60s and 70s and 80s. When you say retirement, and so when I talk to young people, they almost like disconnect from, well, I'm not ready to retire. And I'm thinking, well, what age? Let's change that word retirement. What age do you want to stop working actively for your income and have your income work for you?
I was in a car accident, unfortunately, and it left me unable to walk for 2 weeks. And this actually happened my last year of college. So I was put at a fork in the road, and I had a choice. I could either continue with my education and see what comes next, or I could, take a break or just all out quit. And I truly believe that what you do with your situations, with your limitations, with what God throws at you, really, really makes a difference in your life. It can make a positive impact, or it can make a negative impact. So what I did is I continued forward, and
You know, the great Dr. Willie Jolly once said, a setback is just a setup for a comeback. You know, we've had a lot of setbacks over these last many months. And it may have gotten you to the point where you don't think a comeback is ever possible. But I'm here to tell you, it's never too late.
And my key message, I feel, is that taking care of your own happiness and well-being and prioritizing self-care should be a non-negotiable part of your daily routine. We need to stop having unrealistic expectations for ourselves, for our employees and loved ones and people around us. Because everyone is unique, everyone has their own unique journey, and acceptance of self and others is the key to happiness. It is to start carving these activities in your life that will nourish your mind, body, and spirit, not just the body.
You are an original. You don't have to worry about what anybody else is doing. I've had so many people try to mimic or duplicate what I'm doing, and I don't have a problem with that. And I'll tell you why. Because if God didn't give them the exact same vision, it may work, but it won't work like the vision He gave me. So it's really not competition, it's something else. So don't let fear or competition stop you from going forward.
One quote that I always would love to share with everybody is, no pain, no gain. So don't brood over your challenges, don't cry, just wake up, rise up like the phoenix, keep flying from the ashes, and you will attain what you need to attain. You are born for a purpose, and you have to fulfill the purpose before you hit the bucket.
So plan it, see it, anticipate it. Plan what it is that you want to do. Plan where you want to go. See it in your mind, visualize it, and then anticipate it. Know that it's going to happen.
So we are back with Andrea, and I like the last part, plan it, see it, anticipate. And I think that's what we need here. Anticipate is really very important for the social impact from, just listening to what you said, during this conversation. So one thing that I want to ask Andrea, so what is next for you? Because, it is definitely a very challenging environment. Like we mentioned at the beginning, things going fast, transition, pushing, there's a deadline. I think with a lot of people talking about 2030, why 2030? And, so what's next? And what is the message that you want to leave the audience with today?
Oh, great question. It's a big question too. There's a lot in there. Yeah. I think it's really important to note that, anticipating is really important. I think for me, I have made a pivot. So I've been working solely with companies and, government or companies or not-for-profits around social impact. The pivot I'm making is that's still going to always be there. There's going to be that component for me working with clients. But with the book and the subscription site, I'm moving into making sure that people actually understand what social impact is and its value. I think for too long, people in my work, we tend to be really purpose-driven, really sort of caring, nurturing type of people, not necessarily entrepreneurial in spirit. But I think it's really important, Mira, that we start to step into this space where we go, this is important. As you said, there's some important work to do. If we're going to transition and we're going to do it well, and we're going to do it in a way that doesn't damage the well-being of our communities and their health and well-being, and that we don't want to be in a position where we exist and we don't thrive. We want our communities to thrive. And that means that we have to do this mindfully, thoughtfully, well considered manner, and that's where the social impact sits. So my focus in doing this, and hence the YouTube channel, is the side where I raise awareness, going on programs like yours, talking to people, saying like, this is important, talking to government departments and saying, let's get back to decision making that is human centered. The book and the subscription side is around arming people to do it well, to not see this anymore as something that you can do without actually having skill sets that are applied thoughtfully in a manner that understands, in a manner that allows for us to make the maximum positive impact of the programs, the projects, the products that we develop for the future. And we owe it to ourselves, but we owe it to the next generations as well, to make sure that we are actually doing this well, not just
Fantastic.
doing it.
Yeah, it's not just about doing it. It's about doing it well and in a human-centered way, and thinking about the next generation. A very powerful way of of closing in on this conversation. Obviously, it's not a permanent close, because you can still reach out to Andrea. We've talked about the website, so join the community so that you can have more insight, especially if you're working on projects. I still, remember at the beginning when I was, working on project as an engineer, I was just focused on whatever technical thing and didn't realize what, I was designing, what was going to be the impact. So it is important that at all level we understand whatever we design, whatever we're going to propose, we understand what's going to be the impact, especially the impact for the communities for which we're working. And then there's also the YouTube channel, and I understand that you have a podcast as well. So anyone interested to talk about this subject or, raise any issue anywhere in the world or in Australia, please, reach out to Andrea as well. And you can find her everywhere, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on TikTok. I saw as well on TikTok. You can find her on Instagram as well. So there's no way you can miss her, and there's no excuse to reach out to her. So thank you so much, Andrea, for being my guest today. It has been a very insightful conversation, and it's also good to know that things are progressing, because I'm been working also in the resource sector for quite some time, and I can see that there's been some improvement, and at least there's openness, and there are companies like you who are actually managing this gap that we had before between the companies, the multinationals, and the communities that they supposedly serve. So thank you very much. Unless you have another a last word for the audience, we are ready to leave the platform, and it has been really an amazing conversation for me. And thanks for your time, thanks for being with us, and again, thanks for the amazing work that you're doing so far in social impact and making it real for all of us. So thank you, Andrea, and you enjoy the rest of your weekend so far.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome.